I fired the beacon at 0340 station time, in the dark, without ceremony. There was no ceremony left. The outer ring of Caliph Colony had been burning for 11 hours. The Veth siege line held at 400 kilometers and was not moving, not advancing, not retreating, simply sitting there with the patient arithmetic of a force that knows it has already won. My garrison commander had given me an honest assessment at midnight. We could hold the civilian shelters for perhaps another 30 hours before the power grid failed and the atmospheric processors began to degrade. After that, the math became ugly very quickly. So I went to the beacon to console myself. I did not send an aid. There is something in the act of sending a distress signal that a governor should not delegate. The beacon was a standard Confederation model, a heavy-frequency burst unit, encrypted to the Empire's Rescue Coordination Channel, formatted to broadcast my colony's designator, population count, siege status, and grid coordinates. I checked every field. I authorized the transmission. I watched the green confirmation light hold for 3 seconds, and then I walked back to the viewport and looked at the siege line and waited. Waiting is the part they do not prepare you for. You send the signal, and then you stand in a room, and the room does not change. The siege line is still there. The shelters are still running on reserve power. Your garrison commander is still working from the same map with the same bad numbers. You have done the one thing left to do, and the universe has not yet decided to respond. And in the interval between sending and receiving, a governor learns exactly how much weight she has been carrying and exactly how little of it she can set down. My comms officer, David, brought me tea at 0500. I did not drink it. By 0700, I had received one automated acknowledgement from the Empire's Regional Coordination Bureau, a routing receipt. Nothing more, the kind of confirmation a system generates simply to prove it received the packet. No estimated response time. No fleet designation. No name attached to the relay. At 0900, I began quietly preparing the population transfer lottery. In the event of an ordered evacuation under fire, there would not be enough transit capacity for every civilian in the shelters. I needed a list. I did not tell anyone I was building it because the moment a governor begins building that list, something shifts in the air of a command center, and I needed my staff to keep working. I had the list at 60% complete when David spoke from his console without raising his voice. Governor, I have 3 contacts on the outer approach grid, bearing 27 Mark 9, inbound. They are, he stopped. I heard him key the identification query twice. They are not ours. I crossed the room. The transponder returns were clean and strong and entirely wrong. 2 warship silhouettes, compact, angular in a way the Empire's escort class is not. Lower dorsal profiles, wider engine nacelle spread. Behind them, a third vessel, larger, with a configuration that I recognized after a moment as a hospital cruiser. The identification string they were broadcasting did not match any Empire registry code I had ever seen. The prefix characters were not Confederation standard. Pull the routing log, I said. The beacon's full routing log. Every header field. David worked for 40 seconds. Then he said, in a voice that was very carefully level, Governor, the beacon's routing header carried Sector Designator 7 Aurelius. I looked at him. The Aurelius codes were retired by the Empire 340 years ago, he said. During the 3rd frequency reform, the designator was stripped from our active registry before either of us was born. He paused. It appears that whoever manages the outer patrol grid for Earth never received that update. I turned back to the viewport. Sector Designator 7 Aurelius. A code that had belonged to this region of space for centuries before the Confederation absorbed it, before the Empire renamed the sectors, before 340 years of administrative revision had quietly unmapped a frequency prefix that one planet's patrol grid was apparently still monitoring. My beacon, formatted correctly for the Empire's channel in every field I'd checked, had carried a dead sector code in its routing header, because the beacon unit itself was old and whoever had last maintained its firmware had not updated the header template. The signal had never reached the Empire's Coordination Bureau. It had reached Earth. The 3 ships were decelerating toward the siege perimeter at a rate that suggested They had no intention of slowing further. I watched the Veth grid respond. Their formation began to shift, pulling tighter, reconfiguring for an encounter they had not expected. A transmission came in, human standard encoding, clipped and professional, no preamble. Caliph Colony. This is the patrol vessel Ardent Cross, responding to your Sector 7 Aurelis distress packet. We have your population count and siege coordinates. We are reading 2 Veth formations at 400 kilometers. Confirm you want us to proceed. My comms officer looked at me. Confirm, I said. The Ardent Cross and its companion frigate, which I later learned was called the Meridian Shore, did not engage the Veth in any cinematic sense. They moved to the siege perimeter with the efficiency of professionals who have done this before, positioned themselves between the Veth line and the colony's outer ring, and began broadcasting on every active Veth frequency simultaneously. What they broadcast, I was told afterward, was a detailed summary of Earth's standing engagement doctrine regarding civilian populations under siege. Not a threat, simply a statement of what Earth's ships were authorized to do and what they would do if the siege line did not withdraw within 6 hours. The hospital cruiser, the Enduring Compact, was already moving toward the colony's primary docking ring before the Veth had finished reading the broadcast. I want to be precise about what happened in those 6 hours, because I have read accounts that make it sound cleaner than it was. The Veth did not immediately withdraw. There was a period of approximately 90 minutes during which their formation held position, and I believe they were consulting their own command structure. During that 90 minutes, the Enduring Compact's medical teams were moving through the civilian shelters, triaging the wounded from the outer ring breach events. We had 211 serious casualties. Their teams had protocols I had never seen: fast, systematic, quiet. They did not ask us for facility maps. They had apparently generated their own from our beacon's coordinate data within the first 20 minutes of arrival. At hour 4, the Veth formation began a slow, deliberate withdrawal. It was not a rout. It was a calculation, the same patient arithmetic I had watched hold the siege line all night, now applied in reverse. They were not afraid of the 2 Earth frigates. They were reassessing the cost of continuing against a party they had not accounted for in their original model. By hour 6, the siege line was gone. The Veth left no message. They filed no protest with the Confederation arbitration channel. They simply recalculated, closed their formation, and jumped out of the system in a sequence that took 11 minutes from the first engine flare to the last trace on the grid. My garrison commander watched them go and did not say anything for a long time. Neither did I. I filed my after-action report to the Empire's Regional Coordination Bureau at 1900 that evening. I included in the technical appendix a full account of the routing fault, the dead sector designator, the outdated beacon firmware, the header error. I flagged it for immediate correction so that future distress signals from this colony would reach the correct destination. The Bureau's response arrived within the hour. It was 2 sentences. The routing fault had been noted. A firmware update advisory would be issued to all colony beacon units in the region within the next standard quarter. Noted. Advisory to follow. I was still reading it when a second transmission arrived, formatted in Earth Standard rather than Empire Standard, addressed directly to my office rather than to the Coordination Bureau. It was from the Ardent Cross. Governor, Sector 7 Aurelis remains active on our patrol grid and has not been scheduled for removal. If you experience further incidents requiring assistance, the routing header you currently have on file will reach us. You are welcome to it. There was no signature. There was no name. There was nothing after it but the flat, clean silence of a channel that had closed and did not need anything further from me. I looked at the routing header entry in my beacon's firmware log. Sector Designator 7 Aurelis, flagged now for correction, scheduled to be overwritten in the next maintenance cycle. I authorized the maintenance cycle. Then I noted in the colony's operational log that the cycle had been scheduled and that completion would be confirmed pending the Bureau's advisory. I did not set a deadline for confirmation. Some things can wait for the paperwork.